Patreon.com/the Walk-Off Podcast. $4 a month gets you in there.
Saturday afternoon, it was leaked by the Scott Boras camp that the teams that were in heavily on Xander Bogaerts included the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, obviously, anything from that Boras camp kind of needs to be taken with a grain of salt, obviously. However, it is kind of interesting to hear the Jays were in on him, even if it was just at a smaller rate. Yes, exactly. Even if it was just kicking the tires. So I'm curious what this means for Bo Bichette. I know everyone is making a big deal out of this arbitration hearing coming up, which probably blowing it a little out of proportion, being arbitration is something every player deals with. However, there is a substantial gap between 5 million and 7.5. Like, that's a 33% increase in what Bo's camp's evaluation of him is, and the Blue Jays evaluation. So where are we at on Bo Bichette and the fact that they are checking out other big time shortstops? What does that mean?
Well, it's all very interesting. And I would tend to look at these two storylines as, obviously they both have to do with the Blue Jays and their shortstop situation, but I would largely look at them separately. So if we start with the Bogaerts one, and I would probably add Carlos Correa to this mix as well, because he's a player who at least was on the Blue Jays radar. Again, not saying the talks got serious, but these are the caliber of players that we've seen the Blue Jays check in on very regularly in the course of the last few off seasons. And we know that they were pushing for Justin Verlander. We know that their payroll is pushing over MLB's competitive balance tax threshold of $233 million. So this is a team that's capable of spending. They've gone after big players. They've signed big players. So including a lot of Scott Boras clients. So Xander Bogaerts definitely could have been a fit on paper. Same with Carlos Correa. How those pieces fit together, does that mean that someone would have played third base? Correa or second base potentially. Obviously, with the Blue Jays, Matt Chapman's a free agent after this coming season. Maybe that would have figured in and someone would have shifted over. Maybe Bo Bichette would have moved. Maybe he wouldn't have. We'll see. I mean, or actually we won't. But essentially, that's a topic that the Jays are open to. They have been open to it. I don't think that says they're not interested in Bo Bichette as a shortstop. I think it just says that when there are really good players in free agency, the Jays check. So Bogaerts, Correa, those are the kinds of players the Jays check on. And I think in Boras, when Boras is saying that, I think that he's saying, my guy, Xander Bogaerts, had tons of interest and he was going to do really well for himself. So I think that's about Boras and Bogaerts, not really about the Jays. Now,
so that's almost self-promotion at that point, right? Yeah. He's like, hey, I'm going to get you money. Right. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, and Bichette is not a Boras guy. So he's like, I'm going to boost up Bogaerts and I'm going to, really do my job and let it be known that he had a lot of interest. So I see no problem with that. I think that's my read on it. Could be wrong, but that's how I see the Boras stuff. Then you get to the arbitration stuff with Bo, and that's really interesting because of last year and the way things unfolded for him, where he had an offer from the Blue Jays to renew his contract at a certain amount. I want to say it was about $743,000, and Bichette didn't like the system, the pre-arbitration system that would have awarded him that money, so he declined that and took a lesser amount, closer to the MLB minimum. I think it was about $720K that Bichette ended up earning in 2022. So that's a bit of a statement. Then going to arbitration, this is a big gap. This reflects a substantial difference in how the sides see Bichette's value and see his comparables. To some extent, it's business. I'm sure that's how the Jays would frame it. But for Bichette, we're seeing clearly he's willing to challenge the team on his value. And that doesn't mean that there's ill will, but it does mean that he's not afraid to stand up for himself in this way.